Welcome to Watch Me, where you'll find reviews, tips and tricks on watches. Today we're going to focus on the IWC Pilot. Here I have with me the Mark XVII. The current iteration of it is the Mark XVIII. So we'll go over some of the history of the Pilot Watch, what makes it so popular and desirable, and I'll in particular focus on the Mark XVII in this video because that's one of my favorite versions of this watch, and we'll compare it with the Mark XVIII as well later on. IWC supplied watches to German pilots in the mid 1900s along with several other brands who did so as well, so it's not entirely unique to IWC's heritage, and the good strong marketing and branding and consistent quality. IWC has almost become the default standard when it comes to a pilot watch. It's the first thing you think of when somebody says I want to buy a pilot watch. There is something undeniably cool about planes and flying and piloting an aircraft, and especially when it comes to fighter planes from yesteryear up to the modern era. When you think of something that was purpose built for these folks who are daring and flying these planes and pulling these stunts and putting themselves in such dangerous situations, there is a certain undeniable allure to it that you can sort of imagine and fantasize about, and the Pilot Watch essentially encompasses all of that into this device that you wear on your wrist. Clearly there is a very unique aesthetic when it comes to a pilot watch. The primary purpose or the primary design philosophy in a pilot watch is extreme legibility. The ease of being able to tell the time at a quick glance is the number one priority for a pilot watch, and the way that is achieved is with nice big large sword style hands, very clearly defined markers, the triangle up top at the 12 for easy orientation, and very high contrast. As you can see in this watch, there is a very deep black and white contrast, which is extremely appealing in person. Matte finish on the dial, and the immediate larger surfaces of the case, because you do not want the dial or large polished areas to reflect the sun onto your eyes as you're flying. So typically what brands like IWC do are use very subtle polishing in very key strategic areas on the watch, just to provide some depth. I'm going to focus a bit on the more modern interpretations. Starting around 99-2000 was when the 15 came about, and the jump from 15 to 16 was when they supposedly kind of modernized the watch a little bit. They brought about variation on the layout of the dial. Then you have the 17. Now this may well be the most polarizing pilot watch that IWC has ever launched. The open date wheel was widely criticized and got a lot of flack from the enthusiasts. I personally consider this one of their best watches and one of the most iconic pilot watch that they have launched. Red triangle and the open date wheel. Now if you were to look at it without understanding the purpose or understanding why it is there, you might think it looks silly. You might think it looks busy and cluttered and unnecessary. However, the open date display is based on an altimeter display, and the reason for it is to still be able to grasp the date quickly when it is obscured. So a pilot watch has a very large minute hand, and as you see, when it comes over the 15-minute marker, it will obscure the date almost entirely. In a regular watch with a regular date window, you will have no way of knowing what the date is. Whereas with this, with the indicator above and below, you can still quickly grab the date as 29 in this case. So this is directly lifted from a plane's cockpit, from the altimeter display, and implemented in a practical, usable fashion on a watch. This tiny splash of color may well be one of the smallest patches of color that make a significant difference on a watch. It gives a certain pop and unique vibe and unique aesthetic to the watch. You know, like a red bow tie in a tuxedo, right? It's like a highlight. It's like a small tiny highlight, and when you actually obscure that, the watch suddenly turns monochromatic. The personality is completely different, all because of that one small triangle. Going over to some of the other details, it's a screw down crown, 41mm case, just a hair under 11mm thick, so it wears very comfortably, and the crystal is mildly domed. It's coated on both sides, which is one of the things that IWC do really well, because even at sharp angles the legibility is just incredible on this watch. If you look really close, you can see a thin edging here that broadens a little bit towards the end. There is a very thin polished like surface next to the crystal, and an even thinner one at the edge of the bezel here, which is just an incredible detail. You would have to truly see this in sunlight to be able to appreciate how the attention to detail here makes this stand out as a more unique pilot watch. The loom's pretty good, not quite top dive watch level loom, but it is very functional, and the brush patterns are very well done. They feel great. The depth is good. Another thing to consider here is the 20mm lug width. In this case, I have aftermarket strap on there. It came on a very nice alligator pattern strap. IWC does charge a premium for the bracelet. The bracelet costs a full $1,000 more than the strap version. I personally prefer this on strap. Vintage looking straps and even the NATO straps look really good on it. The movement is ETA made specifically for IWC, so the winding action, the screw down count, they're all really smooth. Not much from a movement perspective. I think from an aesthetic, history, attention to detail, and just the sheer quality of watch that you have here is very appealing. While you can go and buy a pilot watch from Stowa, Archimede, Laco for substantially less, I still feel this is the pilot watch to own, and I would still have a Laco and a Stowa in my collection for maybe one of the other styles, the Biur style with the inner ring. But if I were to have one pilot watch, I'd rather shoot for the IWC. and my particular favorite one, which is the Mark 17. From a brand that is otherwise very rigid, very traditional, this was a kind of a refreshing change from IWC. It was a bold attempt at trying something new, trying to bring more functionality into the basic Pilot Watch, and trying something from a design standpoint which was a little different. So the Mark 18 has sort of gone back to the traditional Pilot look, which is fine, which is great. I mean, probably is more authentic from that sense. However, the Mark 17 has its own visual aesthetic and look and design that instantly says IWC. It cannot be confused for anything else, and that to me is what makes this particular version special. So that's my review. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I'll try to answer to the best of my knowledge. Thanks again, folks. See you next time.